Team Arizona Cardinals trade down part 5.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every damn day, free and available on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. So I have officially transitioned over to Team Trade Down. The Arizona Cardinals do not deserve to draft number 3 overall. I've said over the last 5 seasons, Steve Keim refused to eat his vegetables in the draft. He chose dessert, he chose dessert, he chose dessert, and didn't eat his damn vegetables. The Cardinals trading back is back pay for what Steve Keim didn't do. And when I, get in above my head, I like to bring on people smarter than me. And with that, a new face to the Locked On family over the last few weeks, Damian Parson. Dude, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
And no problem at all, Alex, man. Excited for the time, man.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting. You're off your long stint at the Combine, Team No Sleep, part of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. You are going to be in high demand, as you have already been, across the Locked On platform. So let's do this right away. How good is Will Anderson, and how close of a can't miss top 5 pick is he?
He's exceptional, man. You look at it, the nickname he's developed, in his playing career is the Terminator, because he terminates the offensive blocking schemes and quarterbacks every week in and week out. Doesn't matter if they're trying to play him on the edge or play him reduced inside. He's able to do everything. And the main thing with him is this understanding that you're not going to play him the way that Nick Saban played him, right? A lot of twists and stunts. You're going to more so allow him to work as a true edge outside linebacker, standing up and rushing and working to continue to develop his handwork and his rush plan. But physically gifted, powerful, good arm length, got an incredible burst off the ball. I think there was a stat so that he was second in the team in the 10-yard range, right behind Jalen Waddle, who we all know is a sub 4.3 type of receiver, right, for the Miami Dolphins. So just kind of speaks to that quick burst he has. So, man, he plays the run, and he's really relentless. A guy that plays with a hot motor where he doesn't give up. Even if the first move is stalled, he just continues to work and work and work until he gets back to the quarterback. And we saw another guy like that last year in Aiden Hutchinson, who, while he wasn't the best athlete or he didn't have the greatest arm length, that motor allowed him to get sacks that weren't there.
Damian Parson, Draft Network, the Paige DeMacco's project, as it were. Paige, we kind of rose up together in the Phoenix market. So she's definitely one of my favorites, one of the titans in this industry. Also Locked On NFL Draft, first time. Yes, all of that, got it. The Cardinals don't have many defensive, especially linebackers, that are like, this is their job. Yeah. See quarterback, hit quarterback, namely Isaiah Simmons, who is set on stage to be the next Hassan Reddick in the Arizona Cardinals organization of, well, didn't really know how to use them. Now go be a Pro Bowler somewhere else. So I understand the anemic pass rush that the Cardinals had last year, even though Cam Thomas and Myjai Sanders, the 2 third-round rookies, showed a little. Like, that was it. Like, the pass rush was one of the glaring needs. So I understand that. Now, we're going to talk in the second segment about trade down options for the Cardinals because it's fascinating. And while Will Anderson may be the only non-quarterback on his own tier, I don't know if you want to put Tyree Wilson, I'll ask you about him in a second, and Jalen Carter with the misdemeanors he's dealing with. That secondary tier is pretty chock full of good A-, B+ prospects. Now, say Will Anderson goes 1. Mm-hmm. Do the Cardinals benefit at all from drafting anybody not named Will Anderson at number 3 overall if they stick and stay?
Yes, one man. That's Jalen Carter. You got to clear up meet with him, make sure all the misdemeanor things. Like, it was big news when it came out in Indy at the combine, but talking to a lot of people, it was like he wasn't in the car. So it's just a lot of stuff that could have been much worse if he was the driver. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So, like, what I'm saying? The main thing is him, like, not being honest with the police out of fear or whatever it was. So nail that, outside of that, like, everything I've heard about his character has been A1, A+. You know what I mean? What he does for his teammates in the community, all of that, right? So that's the guy. Like, for me to be completely honest, that's the pick that fits the Cardinals. If Jonathan Gannon is going to bring in that 4-man front that he ran in Philly, right? Jalen Carter is arguably the most disruptive player in this class on the defensive side of the ball. Talking about athleticism, power, length, relentlessness. He toes the line of being, like, not dirty, but just overly aggressive, right? Like, he plays within that fine line because he'll talk to guys, he'll throw guys to the ground, and he just kind of assert his dominance. So he's a tone setter. And then for me, outside of J.J. Watt, the Cardinals defense had missed that. You need somebody in there. So if you do feel comfortable, Jonathan Gannon with Myjai Sanders and Cam Thomas, I think Cam might be in for a better year under Gannon because he's not a 3-4 outside linebacker. He's a 4-3 defensive end. So I think you might get a better version of him. But how do you assist him and any other edge rusher? You have a man in the middle that the offensive coordinators and O-line coaches prepare for week after week, and Jalen Carter has been that. Everybody knew about Devonta Wyatt last year and Jordan Davis. All the scouts, even when those guys were coming into last year's draft, still had their eyes on number 88 from Georgia, Jalen Carter, the young man, because he was the best defensive lineman they had.
Now, tell me this. What differentiates him between him and Quinnen Williams, who was a guy in 2019 who the Cardinals looked at? I mean, him and Nick Bosa, and, it was Kyler Murray was one of those two, probably would have been Nick Bosa, but Quinnen Williams was looked at as a number 1 overall pick for a while. It's taken him 40 games to become what people thought he'd become. Is Jalen Carter a guy that's going to be a work in progress early on? Because just like playing center on the offensive side of the ball, you can't just come in and block and stuff the A gap yourself as a rookie at times. Like, is he a process which the Cardinals can actually afford to utilize and draft because 2023 is probably going to be a punt year?
Yeah. No, he's very similar to Quinnen. I think he's more juiced, has better get off the ball, and understands how to use his hands just as well coming out. For him, it's going to be understanding, like, hey, they're going to throw different things at you in the NFL. That, yes, the SEC threw some stuff at you, but the NFL offensive line coaches are like, okay, we're going to trap you. We're going to, leave you on block and let that backside guard come and pull and try to get you out of the rush lanes and different things like that. For me, even though he lined up everywhere, like he lined up at 0, 1, 3, 5 tech. He even stood up as a defensive end and ran the arc around tackles at times. And I was just like, this is a different cat. But, like, for me, I think the ideal spot for him, especially the 4-man front, is going to be that 3 tech, right? Where he's, kind of inside shade, outside shade of the guard, between the guard and the tackle, instead of being reduced too far inside where he's between that guard and the center when those duo blocks and those double teams are so prevalent. So I think for Jalen Carter, he does remind me some of Quinnen Williams. I think he's just a little bit more juiced. The comp I actually had was like a high ceiling comp was Chris Jones from the Chiefs. And it's like, you look at the ability to not just dominate and stack and shed with violence in the run game and hold, like, I'm talking the body control, the anchor to drop his hips and hold up at the point of attack, even against double teams. But in the passing game, what he's able to do is still yet, because Georgia, dare I say this, Georgia doesn't develop these young men from a pass rush plan standpoint. Him, Wyatt, Davis, Nolan Smith, who's going to be in this draft, and then the first overall pick last year, Trayvon Walker, all those guys are just asked to just hold blocks or penetrate, not so much have a definite plan on how you want to deconstruct blocks. So I think that's going to be the curve for him to learn. But, man, everything is there for him to be a Chris Jones level 10+ sack interior defensive lineman in the league.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And then as we pivot to the trade down options for the Cardinals, I say this and I give this disclaimer a lot. Football sense only. What happened that night was tragic with the fatal car crash in January 15th. And if this wasn't a Laramie Tunsil 15 minutes before the draft started exposure, people tend to get soft and not forget, but just get a little bit softer on things that happen like this 6 weeks, 2 months before the draft. So Jalen Carter is definitely going to be in play for the Cardinals, I would assume. And a perfect scenario would if they trade down to 4 and draft Jalen Carter at 4, if one of the quarterback hungry teams move up. There's so many different things to discuss. Damian Parson, Draft Network, and NFL Locked On NFL Draft, part of the dynamic duo, the new duo over there. What would a trade down look like? Am I crazy to think that trading down twice shouldn't be out of the cards? I'm going to ask Dave. He's told me I'm crazy, my DMs before. Hopefully he will not hold back here as Locked On Cardinals rolls on. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line, point scorers, threes drained, whatever you want. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Follow him at DP_NFL on Twitter. Damian Parson, Draft Network, Locked On NFL Draft. Alex Clancy at Clancy's Corner. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Leave me a comment. On YouTube, comments are the best. Keep them coming. It's just like it's a potpourri of I hate you, you're a genius, and everything in between. And I wouldn't want it any other way. We're talking Cardinals draft, and Will Anderson is the apple of many people's eyes. And what I try to do on this podcast is try to have people think for themselves and not just look at Mel, not just look at McShay, not just look at even you, other people. Think for yourself. Go on YouTube for 15 minutes and watch 2 of your favorite people. That's all you're going to need. This isn't like you're studying for the LSATs or something. Go watch, and you know what? Think outside the box and not just see what other mock drafts are putting up. Because I am in the camp that the Cardinals, as I mentioned during the open, that they don't deserve to pick at 3. They have other things that need to be taken care of to unravel everything that Steve Keim and all of his ineptitude over the last 10 years of the draft, caused the Cardinals to be at right now. That's what built this ecosystem, the fractured foundation of this organization.
No, 100%. Like trading down isn't a bad thing, because like you said, punting on 2023 is big, right? Because Kyler's gonna have coming off the ACL, and I know all the reports. I listened to. I was at the podium when Monti Ossenfort was talking about it, and he's rehabbing well. But at the end of the day, we've seen the RG3 situation before, right? Like rushing back. You don't rush back from these things. You take your time. We saw with J.K. Dobbins with the Baltimore Ravens rushing back from his. He ended up having to have a second surgery in the middle of the season and missed a couple weeks after that, spending the short term on IR. So Kyler Murray is your franchise quarterback right now. So you want to let him come back gracefully to where he's healthy, and he's the main thing with ACL is just being confident and being able to do what you could have done and what you were doing prior to the injury. So punting on 2023, sitting at 3, you think of 2 teams that I know that are looking at quarterbacks: the Las Vegas Raiders, the Carolina Panthers, and of course, well, we all know the Colts. So the Colts more than likely are trying to trade up to 1. So if they were able to make that trade, cool. But if you're sitting at 3 and a team like the Raiders call and say, hey, the trade package is more than like you swap first, you get next year's first, and you get a second, potentially maybe a fourth at worst. You know what I mean? So you go ahead and make that trade. You get the extra first-round picks. Now you got 2 first-rounders next year. You got 2 second-rounders in this class, and you can continue to build this team up to when Kyler comes back healthy in 2024, you know what I mean? You're ready to rock and roll. And so I think that if you were to move back from 3 to like 7, who could be in play? Of course, out of Texas Tech, Tyree Wilson, right? A guy that looks like
so. Hold on, how good is he? How good is he? What's the gap between Tyree Wilson and his? I mean, his measurables are out of this world. They're not in a box by any stretch. What's the gap? Like, so say Will Anderson's an A student, Tyree Wilson a B student, a B+ student.
B plus potentially, yeah, because he has all the things that you want. I don't view him as a full-time edge either. Like his best reps on tape are really rushing the inside ahead of the guards and using that length and that speed and power, that explosiveness. Trying to have him to defeat NFL tackles the way he wins. I don't see that converting over to playing on the edge consistently. I think he could compete in a 4-3. I think what you do with him is that you more than likely use them on rundowns, right? If you got your D tackle situation set up, you got two interior defensive linemen on rundowns. Good, he can help set the edge on first and second down, reduce him inside on third down. Then you walk Majay Sanders up as a DPR type of player, and now you have more juice to your pass rush, juice off the edge on both sides, juice from the interior, right? Especially if you're able to bring back Zach Allen or whatnot, to help the interior D line. But like I said, you have Tyree Wilson, cornerback, right? You got Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, who to me is the best pure man-to-man corner in this class. Talking about soft, quiet feet, confident kid, sticky in coverage. To be 6 foot plus, he's a fluid mover and he's a hyper athlete. 4'3" guy. I think he jumps 38 to 40 in the vert, explosive kid that comes from a track background. And this year at Oregon, he actually took the ball away when he was tested. You know what I mean? Really be able to bait quarterbacks in while he was in zone and different things of that nature. So you look at, because you need a number one corner still, right? So you look at Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez. Another name to keep an eye on too is a Keon White out of Georgia Tech. Because if you trade down into that 7 to 9 range, right? Don't see Jalen Carter falling that far. Neither will Anderson. Depends on what happens with, Seattle. They probably end up taking, if you trade back, they could end up taking Tyree Wilson at 5. Right? So then you're sitting in a situation like, okay, Jonathan Gannon's like, I want a dude on the edge, a dude that I can build and continue to mold. And Keon White is that. 6'4" plus, I think 6'5". So he was listed at 290 during the season, so he's about 285, 288, explosive athlete type of guy. There's a clip that I actually tweeted out where he was playing outside linebacker, and at 290 pounds, he's running down the sideline in man-to-man coverage with a running back on a wheel route. And he's stride for stride with him right in his hip pocket. And I was like, that is freaky. And then being on the field, during the Senior Bowl, he's very coachable too. And that's what I think I always, when you get field access, you get close to players, you want to see how they handle coaching. And it's like he didn't do a rep right, but he thought he did. So he actually, he's like, Coach, what did I do wrong? Like, I thought I did that right. And they told him in the very next play, the very next rep he did it correctly. He's like, okay, I see what you mean, Coach. So like being coachable to learn. And he's a former tight end at Old Dominion. He missed a year due to having an injury that kept him out. So he's still raw in terms of developing. But, man, I'm telling you, like, you think about the Brandon Grahams, those stick body rushers that set the edge, that can really collapse the edge in the passing game as well. I think Jonathan Gannon could have some fun with a young man like Keon White if he was, you were able to trade back to either 7 or 9 or maybe a little bit further if a team wants to jump outside of the top 10 to 3 and you get a King's ransom type of situation, right? Keon White, would be there, and I would like to see what Jonathan Gannon could do with him.
It's interesting, especially with Nick Rallis, the former linebacker coach of the Eagles, now being the defensive coordinator. He needs ammo. And the thing is, and I do have a couple more questions, Russ Jackson. I apologize, this is going to be brutal, but the Cardinals have a couple different ways they can go with Zach Allen and Byron Murphy. Like if you look at Christian Gonzalez and you draft him at 7, if you trade back and you re-sign Byron Murphy, immediate strength on defense. That's not the safety position. If you draft Jalen Carter and re-sign Zach Allen, immediate strength. So the Cardinals are going to have to figure out if they want to spread or if they want to really centralize and pick out James Bradbury, Gardner John. Like if they want to add other pieces from a veteran position, the Cardinals are a tabula rasa, clean slate. We have no idea what this roster is going to look like. It's just going to be fascinating. And remember, friends, Caleb Williams is coming out in the draft next year, and the Cardinals will have 2 bites of the apple within the top 5. If they trade back with the Raiders, if they trade back with Carolina, if you tell me that they have a worse shot at getting the number 1 overall pick than maybe Houston or Chicago are on the rise, I'd say hooey fish. The Cardinals need as many lines in the water next year to potentially nab that number 1 overall pick because they will get 100 first-round picks for a team that wants to trade up for Caleb Williams.
That is a very strong point. That's a very strong, and that's something I've actually considered, with talking to people like, man, the best bet for Arizona is to not, I wouldn't play Kyler the whole season. I would go ahead and say, forget it, and let's have the worst record in the league. Because I get that number 1 pick. Now, everybody behind me, there's going to be teams that want Caleb, that want Drake May. Well, you're going to have to give me a whole lot to get him. I might ask for a player, multiple picks. You're going to have to give me a legit King's ransom and probably the castle to come up here and get this first overall pick. You know what I mean? Then you trade back and, D-Hop is more than likely traded. You can get Marvin Harrison Jr.
Let me tell you what. So with me, Jackson Smith and Jigba's been the apple of my eye for a long time. So, and that's another thing with the trade down. Say the Cardinals get another second-round pick this year. They're going to get the 3rd overall pick in the 2nd round, maybe one in the middle. Who's to say they don't package those 2 and trade back into the 1st round and nab somebody else? Trading back opens up the opportunity box that the Cardinals don't have when they just stick and pick with one guy. They have much more needs. There's going to be transcendent talent in every draft. The Cardinals just needs to find it. Damian Pierce, thanks so much for joining me, man. Locked on NFL Draft. You can check him out every day, 30 minutes. All the draft knowledge you could choke down from now through the middle of April until you just sleep for a month. I would assume afterwards. Thanks so much for joining me. Get ready for
college football season.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it. Man.
Anytime.
Well, that's why I have people on who are smarter than I am to talk about that. There are just so many options. I'm going to talk about a lot about what Damian just talked about because there's a lot to unpack. I'll talk about it as we roll on. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. How was that for information? At Clancy's Corner on Twitter. Please like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn notifications on. Leave a comment. I love interacting with people. I love chatting. Love doing it all. So many options. Will Anderson, arguably the 1A to Jalen Carter's 1, according to Damian Parson, who's a lot smarter than I am when it comes to this. And it's interesting because the Jalen Carter news came out so soon in this process. And yes, this is not negating anything that happened. This is not overlooking the misdemeanors that he was charged with. It's an ongoing situation. But if everything seems to be dissipated at that point, he needs to be brought back into the conversation. And that's why Will Anderson or bust, I just feel like is a fool's errand to think that way, personally. The way the Cardinals can move back and accumulate capital, not just to draft people, but maybe to turn those draft picks into players, maybe to move back into the 1st round, it opens up the malleability and flexibility the Cardinals need in the 2023 draft in an effort to make the most immediate impact. Not only for the 2023 season, but immediate impact on setting themselves up for success for the 2024 draft as well, and the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, who will, if the 1st overall pick is not a quarterback needy team, may go for the biggest ransom of picks that we've ever seen a number 1 overall pick go for. So if the Cardinals have 2 options instead of 3 in the top 5 or top 7 next year, who knows? What are the chances they don't get the 1st overall pick next year? Who knows? I'm just imploring you, keep an open mind. It's not just to get more draft picks so they can draft more players to fill more needs. It's to position themselves in a position of power, something they've never really been in, at least over the last handful of seasons. And I implore you, think about it like that as we go into draft season, as we go into free agency. What move would make the Cardinals have the most power for the next offseason draft for 2023 and 2024? That's why I think trading back is the best course of action for the team. Thank you to Damian Parson, Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.